about advice for dealing with police. And just to let everybody know what your rights are. So the whole idea is this is a peaceful protest about how people want our future to be. And we're going to lead by example. But leading by example with courage doesn't mean that we have to be afraid of authority. It means we need to know where the boundaries are. And we can operate right up to the boundaries without crossing the boundaries. Because we don't want to give these guys any excuse to pull out their tasers or whatever else they've got in their pockets. Okay? We want them to join us because their own colleagues are being fired for not being vaccinated. And we've been contacted by so many New Zealand police who are devastated after giving a life of duty to the people of New Zealand. They're being told that if they're not vaccinated, they can't come to work anymore. So we're really wanting to stand with the New Zealand police and encourage them and remind them of their oath to the people of New Zealand when they signed up to the police to uphold the police and uphold the rule of law and uphold the rights of New Zealanders. Absolutely. And over the years, part of my work, I've had quite a few meetings with the police, and it seems like there are some really major gaps in the training of our police these days. Our police are not under the thumb of the government. They're not supposed to be under the thumb of the government. They're supposed to be independent. And it's really so important that we keep reminding them that. And it's really quite important that their bosses remember that, because it's not okay that they appoint bosses who are obedient to the government. The boss's duty are public servants to the people of New Zealand as well. So we've all got a really big job on our hands educating each other about how we respect each other's rights and how we behave, and we're all testing new situations as all of the change around us is happening before our very eyes. Who would have thought it would have ever become like this, the way it's come? But it's really, really important that we, the people, step up to behave how we need to be. A superb environment. We've just had a group of people coming together, volunteering to do all sorts of different roles to keep things safe and happy and enjoyable for everybody. Holland volunteers doing amazing things, and just to help support everybody to have the best possible time. And we also need to remind the police, because what hardly anybody learns in New Zealand, even in law school and certainly in the public service anymore, is that although you have powers to do things, it doesn't mean you should do them, right? All of our public servants, including our police, first of all they must act lawfully. They must act within the law. They can't do anything against an independent person's rights without a law allowing them to do that, unless the person consents, of course. So they can't just do something because they think it's a bright idea. They've got to have a law that allows them to do it. And it's got to be a law that's consistent with the New Zealand Bill of Rights that respects our freedoms and rights. So, and human rights, all of those laws, the laws that have been based on decades of human rights that have been built up by responsible people for good reasons. So that all of these mandates and orders that the government keeps whizzing through in record speed, if they're not consistent with the Bill of Rights, they're not laws, they're not binding. There's a hierarchy, and the Bill of Rights and the freedoms are at the top. So nobody can interfere with our fundamental rights and freedoms, with our body sovereignty and the important things. The second thing that you learn with these public law rights is that the police and any other public official must act reasonably. Okay, so although they may have a law that can let them do things, they must adapt to the circumstances and they must be reasonable. And so, for example, where we've got extreme circumstances here, where our government is failing to respect the law, we need a lot more leeway for our people to have some flexibility to stand up for their rights. And so this is the type of thing that I presume these officers have been told by their bosses, but if they haven't, we'll tell them directly just in case. And the third general principle is they must act fairly. They must be procedurally fair. They must tell people their rights. They can't bully you and hope that you tell them things or do things that they've actually got no right to ask you to do. They have to read you your rights if they want to ask. They can tell you that you don't have to answer questions, all that type of thing. They actually have to tell you those things. They can't just put pressure on you and intimidate you and make you afraid, and then you operate under fear. So this whole informed consent thing is super important. It's super important when you're dealing with the police, and it's super important with the whole medical side of things, that people know what their rights are, because if you don't know what your rights are, you don't know whether to give consent or not. So it's a big education process that we've got going on. It seems to have been really badly lacking. A good friend of mine, Brian, was brought out to New Zealand many decades ago to educate the public service, when they were called the public service, on good practice and how the public service should act. He got made redundant, and as far as I can tell, they've never had anybody doing that similar training. So we've got a whole generation of public servants that don't even understand what their duties are. So part of this whole new wave of energy and creation is let's start thinking about these things, getting ourselves educated, getting ourselves informed, sharing what we know, asking questions, don't consent. If somebody comes to you and says you've got to take down your tent, you say, well, why? Because there's no law that says you can't have a tent on Parliament grounds. All we have is the Speaker of the House, Kevin Mallard, who makes various policies and rules. But those policies and rules are subject to the New Zealand Bill of Rights. And the New Zealand Bill of Rights is higher in the system. He can't make rules that are inconsistent with the New Zealand Bill of Rights. It's our Parliament, and we can be here. He can't make arbitrary rules that say people have to go home at a certain time, or they can get a chair, or they can't get a chair, or they can get a tent, or they can't get a tent. And that's where we are all here to remind them. We're here to remind them. And I'm hoping that the police are doing some research on this too. There's been a whole lot of court cases on this. It's very, very clear. Any rule or any policy that's inconsistent with the Bill of Rights is illegal. We can't have police enforcing illegal rules, can we? Because that is contrary to the rule of law, and that is contrary to the oath that they swear. So it's all a big learning. They may not have been told of this. They've probably just been told to line up with their arms folded and gloves on and do what they're told. What our challenge to them is to think for themselves. Yes. Work out what side of history they want to be on. Are they on the side of freedom and people? Power to the people! I'm asking them to be mindful of the bad treatment they and their colleagues have themselves received with this bullying mandate, along with our doctors and our healthcare workers and our midwives, our teachers, our corrections officers, and now a whole lot of private mandates and a whole lot of private groups. Because if the people who have responsible positions show some courage and step up. We can change this really, really quickly. We can change it today. All it takes is a bit of courage and a bit of commitment. The people are doing their thing, and there are waves and waves and waves of people behind us. We know that because we've all seen them on the way here. We've never seen so many people out on the street as we've seen over the last few days. So we're in a time of amazing change. It's going to take a lot of thinking, a lot of loving, a lot of care, a lot of respect for each other. But just stay calm, stand by your rights, and let's hope that the guys on this side of the fence do the same thing. So that's my challenge to you guys. So I hope that's been helpful, guys. Stay strong. You're all heroes. You're all part of the future. Good on you all.
You're amazing, Sue. Thank you so much. So knowledge is power, right?